friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day one of our 13 days of Halloween series here at Polly's Paper Studio. I am so excited to share with you all of the crafty projects that we have planned. And of course, we are going to continue with the question of the day. I so enjoy reading all of your feedback, and I know that you all enjoy reading each other's comments as well. So that is such a great way to connect with my crafty little family. Before we get started, I wanted to take a quick second to thank the Tech Hubby for bringing me another really awesome intro. I love how they're just a little different every year, and I know that all of my peeps also really enjoy seeing that. So give Tech Hubby a little love down in the comments for another great intro. And so for today's project, we're going to use that Simple Stories collection that caused so much drama for me. And this project is just a really lovely mini album. Of course, we're going to start with a familiar base and make some changes to it because that really helps to show how versatile it really can be. And so we're going to create this 5x6 mini album. There is so much space in here. There are flip pages, there are flip pages that fold down as well with flaps on the top, and each set of pages has a pocket, and there are fun inserts in each of these. So I think this would be such a fun way to have an October daily album, and I kind of wish I had thought about that before I started the journal style one that I am going to use. But wouldn't this be a wonderful way to save all of those special pictures and memories from October? And I also think that this would make an amazing gift if you have fill this up, send it to someone that will enjoy your pictures and memories just as much as you do. So this is really probably the heaviest album I have ever made because it has nearly an entire collection in it. So that's really fun. It's very chunky and very sturdy and heavy, and that is just how I like my mini albums. So we're going to create the base first and then cover that with all of our beautiful collection papers. So if that sounds good to you, then stick with me and we will make it together. As I mentioned, we're working with that Simple Stories, Simple Vintage October 31st collection. And I did get through very nearly most of this collection. There is so much surface space in this version of our mini album that it did take quite a lot. And so I would suggest, if you plan to recreate this, that you start off with a either full collection or a large quantity of coordinating paper if you're working from your stash, because there is a lot to cover. And so just be warned of that before you get started. And I may have enough left to do just maybe a small project, but then we're going to not have this sitting in our stash for next year, and that makes me pretty happy. Before I get started assembling this album, I just wanted to show you how much there is even before we add our patterned paper and cardstock. This is going to be a very heavy, very sturdy album. And so this is kind of what the base is going to look like before we add all of the layers. So this book is going to break down basically into 4 different sections, that being the pages themselves, the sturdy cover, the regular flip pages, and then the newer addition for this version, which is going to be a kind of flip page, but it's going to have a flap. So we're going to be using the 65 pound weight cardstock as well as 110. Now I'm not going to be adding as many 110 pieces as I typically would, just because we're going to be adding so much paper layers that it will be very sturdy even without it. And then one additional piece we'll use to wrap that spine so that we get a nice finished look. So let's have a look at the first section of pieces here. This is 65-pound weight cardstock, and it is cut to be 6 inches high by 10¼ inches wide. It's scored at 5 and then also at 5¼ So our finished book is going to be 6 inches high by 5 inches wide. And then when we get all of these bits on, it will be a little bit over an inch in depth. So this is going to be a very good size for using your 12 by 12 or 6 by 6 paper pads without creating a lot of additional offcuts. So the first thing I want to do, once I have all of my pages cut and scored, is add some double-sided adhesive tape to one side of the page and then also down along that spine. And since this is a 1/4 inch, it was perfect for my 1/4 inch double-sided adhesive. So I'm going to just assemble these as I typically do, just kind of lining up the corners and then the side. And because they're all cut to be the same size, they will assemble quite easily. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'll pull the tape first and then we'll add all these pieces together. So here are the 4 sections adhered to each other, and you can see that our book is going to start to take shape. Now, what I want to do is bring in this other 65-pound weight piece, and I want to wrap the spine so that we can have a nice finished edge. So I'm going to bring in my scoreboard for this. Because I'm going to score and adhere as I work along. That will give me the most precise measurement that I can have. So here is my scoreboard. So this spine piece is 6 high and also 5 wide. It doesn't matter exactly where this lands. I just want to make sure that I can score it along where the edges are so that we get a nice crisp edge. I want to bring over this spine cover, and it's more important to me that I get it lined up straight and even along that spine, because we can trim excess if that happens, and I just want to make sure that I've got everything lined up on the outside so that we can go ahead and flip that over and score it as we go along. So I'll just flip that, and then I will bend all of my pages back toward the other side. And then I will add my score line here by positioning it right along one of the grooves in the scoreboard. This is going to give us a nice crisp finished edge, and I'll just go ahead and fold that over here. And so we've got one side done. Now I would sometimes bring this paper all the way over, but we're going to capture this outside page into our heavier cardstock, so it will be disguised under that. So now I'm just going to flip that over, and I positioned all the pages along there toward the other side so that I could line this up as well. So I've got that along one of the grooves, and I'll put my score mark here and then flip this page over as well, and that gives us a nice finished edge there all along the outside. So the next thing we want to do is add those extra sturdy covers to the front and back. So this is 110-pound cardstock. It's cut to be 6 high by 10 wide and scored at 5. And then I did put some adhesive on both sides. There are 2 of these, one for the front and one for the back. And I find it is a lot easier to pull the tape from just one side to begin with so that you can position this exactly where you want and then fold over the other side. So what I want to do is go back to my 2 glue combo just to be sure that this is nice and sturdy. So I'll bring my page up and I'm positioning the side that has the tape still covered, and I'll bring that right up to the edge. The hardest part of this is just keeping your hands out of the glue, which I never really do successfully. But once you've got that side on, you can flip it over and then take the tape from this side as well, and then add your glue and fold it over, and the outside cover will be on, and it will be nice and thick and sturdy. Then I can just repeat the process for the back cover. So here is our base all completed with the extra sturdy outside cover. So the next thing I want to do is bring in some full-size page flips, and so we're going to go back to the 65-pound weight cardstock for this, and once again it is 6 high by 10 wide and scored at 5. And we are also going to continue with our 2 glue combo. I want my pages to flip outward, so I'm going to position my fold along the outside of the book, and I also want to have all of my page flips on the left-hand side. So I will continue to work along and add these flips in. Okay, so now we have all of our full-size page flips added to the left-hand side, and I think up to this point that might have looked pretty similar to some other versions of this mini album that we have made. But now we're going to get into the big change for this album, and these are going to be flip pages. However, they're going to flip down and they have a flap on the top. You're going to want to have some of that extra wide 65-pound weight cardstock that we've been using for some of our flip books and albums. I picked mine up from Amazon, and I have been told also that it is available at Walmart. I probably would have gotten it there so that I didn't wind up with the huge quantity that I have, but that's okay. I just want to have enough so that I can do all of the folds on one piece, and since it's 6 inches high, I would not have been able to use a 12 by 12 sheet. Now, if you don't have that extra wide cardstock, you could easily piece this together. I would start with a 12 by 12 and then score it, and then add an additional piece to the back so that you would have enough length so that you could do this additional fold. As it is, our piece for this is going to be 5 high by 15 wide, and that's just because we're going to turn it and fold it in the opposite direction. So it only needs to be as high as the width of the book. And so it is scored at 6 and then also 12, and that is going to cover the same amount as our flip page on the left, only we're going to be folding it down. And so I'm going to add this once again with my double-sided tape and the glue to be extra sure that it will be very sturdy. And these are all going on the right-hand side. So this will complete the base, and then we can begin to add all of that beautiful pattern paper layer. Okay, here's our base all finished. We've got our full-size flips, and then we've got the flips that have the top flap, and we have that all throughout. So you can see this is a pretty good size book before we even begin adding our pattern paper layers. So let's get started on that. Now I have prepared all of my pieces here, you can see, so that I can keep these in order as we work along, because there is quite a lot to put in. And so for my first page, I do have all of my bits here laid out. The first thing I want to do is add my pocket to the left-hand page, which is our flap page. So I need to bring my scoreboard back in and put my score lines on my pocket. So the full-size card stock for all of the pages inside, as well as the front and back cover, is going to be 5 7/8 high by 4 7/8 wide for the card stock. And the pattern paper is 5 3/4 high by 4 3/4 wide. And so that's going to give us our nice border, and then we'll have the border from the book base as well. So I want to add my pocket to the pattern paper before I adhere it to the cardstock. And so I just have a piece cut here that is 3 high. That is 3 high by whatever measurement wide. It doesn't really matter because you're gonna clip that off. So I'm going to add my first score line, which will be the bottom, and my pattern paper dictates where that score line will go. So for this project, my bottom score line is going to be at 2 5/8. And then I'm flipping this over, and I'll just position my pattern paper along the top there on top of my cardstock, and I'll position that where I can see the edge falls right on to one of the score lines. I will very carefully move this whole thing over so that the left-hand side now falls on a full-size score line. And now I'm sure that it will wrap around well and not have any of that weird buckling. What you want to do now to remove a little bit of the bulk is just come in and give yourself around 1/2 inch or so, and then cut the corner off where those score lines intersect. So this will just help reduce a little bit of the bulk on the inside. So you can just go ahead and fold that over now. We're done with the scoreboard. So I'm going to remove the bottom portion of our tape here and make sure I see the direction of the pattern so that I get my pocket going in the right direction, and I'm just going to set that into where those score lines are and fold those flaps over, and that will give us quite a lot of extra room in the pocket. We can add inserts and maybe some additional fun mementos or ephemera pieces. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more tape to the outside of this pocket, and we do want to go back in with our 2 glues for this as well, because this is a bit bulky. Then I'll just go ahead and center that onto our piece of cardstock. It's easier to get it positioned on the top part, and then the rest will fall into place. So here is our pocket page, and I do want to add a little bit of pattern paper here as well. So this is actually offcut from when I was cutting the full-size pages, so this was a great use of that, not winding up in the stash. So this is 2.5 inches high by 4 3/4 inches wide. So it will be the same as the pattern paper inside the pocket. We only need our double-sided tape for this. And then it will fit with a nice border of that black cardstock on top. So now we have a good generous size pocket. Before we add this to our book, there's an additional element that I want to add for this book, and I wanted to include quite a few tabs on the side, not just one on every other page as I typically do. So I cut these with more of my scraps created from when I cut the pages, and I just used my envelope punch board. I punched the first one, and then I moved it down and lined it up to 2.5 and punched the second one, and then I just cut that portion out so they would be enough to glue onto the back of the page, and I'll capture these tabs between the page and the book base. So I want to bring over my book and see how these fall. So once it's closed, I want my tab to be here, and I'm just going to alternate them, leaving a gap between the middle so that I can add my ribbon closure. So let's pull a little bit of this tape here, and I did want the polka dot on top, so I'll just flip that over and line that up to where the score line is, and then add this to the center of this page. So we're going to get that nice border showing from the book base. I did flip that over just so that I could get this lined up a little bit easier, and so I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that to that base. So when it's flipped over, my tab will be shown on the outside, and then this will be the full-size flip page for here. So I am going to coordinate the 2 pages on the front of these flips so that they coordinate, since you can see them together. And I do need to include the tab for this one as well. So I'll just make sure that I have the direction that I want for this and then flip it over. And I'll just line that up right along where that was cut with the envelope punch board. And I have already added just a little bit of adhesive to the back, and this will go on to this page. And I'm just going to adhere it right to the center like I did on the left-hand page. And you can see now we've got 2 of our tabs sticking out. So let's go ahead and finish the inside of these flips. And as I did on the outside, I do want to have them coordinated. And this is why we wind up using a very good chunk of that collection, because all the inside pieces here would take up an entire sheet. So for the outside, it's a half, and then the inside, it's a full. But remember that we have 4 portions. So that did eat up quite a lot of that collection. And with Simple Stories, they do really kind of have a lot of cut apart images or journal cards of various sizes. So that also kind of helps you to determine what of the pattern papers you're going to put on the inside, because you'll do want to save those images to use as accents and inserts. So here's the inside of our flips finish, and we've got one more piece left, and that is to cover the flap that will close over this. So I've got my cardstock cut to be 2 7/8 by 4 7/8 wide, and the pattern paper is 2 3/4 by 4 3/4. I think it will be easier to position this if I flip it around a little bit. And so this is just going to cover the front and back. And I chose to use this specific pattern throughout on all the flaps, just so that I would get a consistent look from page to page. And so I'm just going to center this here, and that will cover the flap. Now I do have some of the cut aparts planned for the pocket. I picked 2 that are the 4x4 size and one that is the 3x4, and you can tuck those into the pocket along with other things when you finish it. But I did want to add a little something extra fun to the flap. So I took one of the images for each set of pages that I really liked, and I cut a piece of 110-pound cardstock to be 4 1/8 high by 3 1/8 wide. And then I cut my cardstock to be 4 high by 3 wide, and the pattern paper is 3 7/8 by 2 7/8, and that just gives us a really nice border all the way around. And I'm going to add my adhesive only to the top so that I don't accidentally seal up my pocket. So this is another place where 2 glues is a good idea, especially since you'll be moving the flap with this image. So I just kind of want to center that here and press that into place. And that's going to give a nice decoration to the right-hand pages, as well as keep this flap over. So we're going to repeat the process for the remaining sets of pages. So I'll just go ahead and work through that, and then I will meet you back here when we decorate the cover. I'm just going to very quickly interrupt my sped up portion of this assembly part to share that I am going to adjust my plan to put a tab on each page. I did not anticipate the problem that it was going to cause. And so for the first 2 pages, it was fine. But then when this flap opens, it was causing my tab to get stuck on these papers. So I'm going to move forward and just alternate my tabs on the pages that flip down, because they are not going to be running into the page that's next to it. So that is just a quick update, and sometimes it's design on the fly, and that worked out fine because we're still going to have enough tabs and it's not going to interfere with the functionality of our book. So let's get back to assembling. So here is a quick peek of those inside pages done. We have all of the flip pages, all of the inserts added, and our tabs on the side. And so I have already off camera added my pattern paper to the back and then also to the spine. So that's a little bit challenging for me to do on camera because I can't see over top of it very well to get it positioned. I did also add just a small strip of my double-sided adhesive so that I can temporarily tack on this trim. And so I'll just capture this between the layers of the cover and the base. So for the cover, I did actually work ahead a little because I wanted to have a stitching border, and that meant that I would have to bring my sewing machine downstairs. And so I just went ahead and prepared this while I was upstairs. I have the same pattern as on the back, but I did kind of a patchwork layering, and so I was able to use some of the offcuts as I worked along, and that created less waste and gave me a kind of a nice layered look. So I put a strip along the bottom and then a strip along the side, and this here was part of one of the journal cards. I just clipped that out, and then I topped it with a piece of the scrap that I die cut with that dovetail. Has a little bit of a stitch detail along the outside as well. And so I'm just going to add this right over the cover. I decided to do just one line of stitching there so that it would have a nice border you could easily add a second or third line and just have kind of a scribbly border on that. I think that would look nice as well. It gives it a lot of texture, so that's really fun. Now, I do have a doily for this, and I cut this black cardstock with this Cherry Lynn Design Canadian kaleidoscope. I don't think that's still available, but I was drawn to it because it reminded me of a spider web. Maybe it's easier to see this way. So I think if you had a spider web die, that would work equally well. I have also seen them at Michael's and Joann's sold in a package, so keep your eye out for something like that, a pre-cut embellishment. And this isn't a spider web, but it kind of just gave me that vibe, and so I decided to use that. Now I'm going to peel these up just a little bit so that I can sneak these in under these layers. So I'm just going to apply a little hot glue here, and then I will position this under that label. I'm not concerned about the glue that's going to squeeze out because I can cover that with my focal image. So this is one of the journal card cut aparts. I did use a nested circle die set to create the round and then the border. I popped that up on some spacers, and I'm going to adhere this between the label and then the secondary die cut, just so that I can get some nice layering. This is a little higher than center because I do have a large floral arrangement to include, so we need to have a little space for that. And I just want to finish this off with a little bit of that Tombow so that this portion will stick down into the layers. So as I mentioned, I did take one of the stickers from the sticker sheet, and I put those on a bit of paper and cut it back out, and then I put a small section of the spacer here in the corner in the portion that will overlap this first raised area. And so I want to create kind of an arrangement cluster, and so I'm going to put this die cut star down first and then top it with this sentiment. This is so interesting to me, this sticker. The Hocus Pocus movie I have never actually seen. I want to. I don't know why I haven't, but that is on my bucket list for this year so that I can include that in my October documented album. Okay, so here is that flower arrangement that I mentioned, and I did create this as part of a tutorial video. I'll link that at the top of the description so you can find that if you're interested in creating one like this for yourself. And I did finish it with some more of the ribbon here. This is a bold check from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and so I wanted to put some down here on the corner as well. Because I have one gold star here on top, I want to create a little bit of balance by adding another one here on this side. So I'm just going to stick that down very quickly so that I can layer on these flowers. So I'm going to just be careful to make sure not to cover the sentiment on that image. And then of course we want to add some additional details. I've just got a charm here that is a spider web in kind of a teardrop shape. I'm going to add this as I usually do with some string and hot glue. Then I'm just going to cover those cut ends of the string with this vintage button. This has a little bit more detail than I usually put on my covers now that I'm working with some embellishment clusters there. So I think that is a fun way to kind of level up what we would typically be putting on the cover of our mini albums. So I'm gonna add a couple of these sequins. And while I'm picking these out, I think this is a good time For the question of the day, so this is the first one from our series. So this is going to be a would you rather trick or treat with a werewolf or a zombie. So I think I'm going to pick werewolf because I am an animal person and I've always wanted to have a dog. And honestly, if zombies are going to eat my brain, I don't really have a lot left to lose. So I want to hang on to it for all I can. And so I'm going to pick werewolf. You can leave your pick in the description below. And it is a lot of fun to go back and read all of those comments. Y'all are so funny, and it's such a nice way to connect with everyone. So I'm just going to secure my sequins with a little Tombow. And then one final detail I want to include is just a little bit of stickles, some on the details here, not all over and crazy, just a little subtle accent. Okay, so that is all for our mini album for day one. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you come back for day 2 of our 13 days of Halloween series. And don't forget to leave me a comment and a big thumbs up for this project. Remember, you can find links for the products I mentioned in the description below, as well as for our social media sites. If you're not already, I would love for you to join my crafty little family. So don't forget to hit that subscribe before you go, and also the bell notification so you will be alerted every time we add new content. As always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.